Hi folks, and welcome to another edition of Positivity Now, the show that focuses on all things positive. I am your host, Jonas Kane. A number of episodes, I talked about the importance of investing in worthy guides. It's the idea of finding mentors who can speak into our lives and add value. When I was 8 years old, I met my first mentor in the magic world. My father took me to a place called the Fun Shop. With a name like that, who wouldn't want to go there? And at the Fun Shop, there was a man working behind the counter named Bob Carroll. He's a magician, ventriloquist, comedian, and all-around great guy. When I was 8 years old, walking in there, imagine a little 8-year-old me, a little cute, adorable me walking in there. And Bob saw my passion for magic, and he performed magic for me. He taught me some things, and he gave me my very first professional magic trick. Now notice I didn't say he sold it to me. He literally gave me my first magic trick. That's just the kind of person that he is, seeing someone who has a passion and is willing to invest in them. At the end of this episode, I'm going to share a little surprise with you folks. I'm going to perform that magic trick that Bob shared with me that day. But first, I recently had an opportunity to sit down with Bob in his home in Burbank, California, and I got to ask him about his secret to success, how he's been able to facilitate positive experiences in his own life. Take a look.
Are we on now?
We are on now.
Okay, where are we? Oh, yeah. Okay.
We're in Burbank, California.
Burbank, California. That's right. I was telling you a story. Pardon us. We're talking.
Yeah.
I was telling you about being persistent, and I was telling you that when I was a kid, I started at 9 years old with my uncle mopping floors in office buildings, and that's not a big deal today because kids they don't want to do it. They don't want to play their games, but it was a big deal for me because I got $5 for the day.
That's a lot of money in the 1800s.
Yes, in the 1800s, it was a lot of money. I didn't get these gray hair for nothing. That's right. Yeah. It was. But that was my world into getting into the market of learning how to make a living. And then from then I went to selling car washes, spray wash, car waxes, until I finally said, there's got to be something better. And I wanted to be persistent in what I was doing at all times, because I said I didn't know what the word meant. But when I was a kid, I used to watch Ed Sullivan. And for the older people in the audience, they would know that he had a variety show.
Really big show.
Really, really fine show right here. Now we're on our audience tonight. Mr. Johnny Weissmiller. Come on out, Johnny, do some swimming. Do your Tarzan yell. Come on out here. And we had the entire female population of Guadalajara right here, row 2. So, yeah, I would watch Ed Sullivan, see the variety acts, and I would say, Topo Gigio, Little Mouse that talked, Paul Winchell, Jerry Mahoney, Jimmy Nelson, Danny O'Day, magic acts like Mr. Electric was on the show, Cardini was on the show. And so I said, why can't I do all of those things? Why can't I be whatever I want to be? So I said, this is great. So I learned how to do impressions, because there was always somebody on, like Frank Gorshin. There was somebody like Rich Little. They always had impressionists on. And it was the cheapest thing to do, because as a kid, I couldn't afford magic tricks or puppets or any of that stuff. So I became an impressionist at 11 years old.
You must have made a big impression.
I did make a big impression. I did John F. Kennedy. I did Johnny Carson. Here's Johnny. I was much better at 11 than I am now. And I did Ed Sullivan, and I did James Cagney, and I won the contest. And it was
at 11 years old.
At 11 years old, there wasn't that many acts in my town.
Okay. It's easy to be number one.
It was like 7 or 8 acts. Billy Benton and his Blind Bears. It was a lot of different
Blind Bears?
I don't know. It was a lot of different variety acts. So anyway, I won, and the radio station said, could you come on our radio station and do those impressions? So I thought it was great. I mean, I was 11 years old. I was on the radio. And it was those days when they had these big records. I mean, these were big records that they had transcripts on. Like a show would be on a big turntable and say, now it's time to listen to the Bergen and McCarthy show. And put the record on, and for half an hour it'd be just the record. But then they interrupted the records and stuff, and then they played records. And they had me on, and I'd do impressions, and it was great. I really liked being on the radio. And I said, it was perfect for me. And I said, I'm going to be a disc jockey. That's how I wanted to be persistent. I go, this is the way I wanted to do. I'm just going to be a disc jockey the rest of my life. So I kept going to the radio station all the time. Little did I know they didn't want a kid at the radio station hanging around. But they couldn't get rid of me. No matter how many times I just show up and they go, you here again? I would file records. I would get the news. I would help them out with different things. I'd go get them coffee. Whatever. So the disc jockeys, they didn't want me to leave.
Yeah, because you were helping them out.
Yeah, if they had to go to the restroom, they go, could you watch the records? No, make sure everything is fine. I go, okay, and don't touch this. No, fine. So, and I says, this is great. So then I became like a mascot. And if I wasn't there, they go, where's Bob? Is Bob coming in today? So I would ride my bike to the radio station. And, those days, everything was safe. You could hitchhike in those days in the 60s. You weren't afraid of things. Today, you don't want to do that. So I was always at the radio station. I was always doing things for them until one day the station manager came up to me and said, you can't come in here anymore for free. And I said, what do you mean? We're not going to let you come here anymore and do any of this stuff anymore. And I was like,
You're probably crushed.
I was crushed. I go, I thought I was, and they said, so instead, we're going to pay you. So I said, really?
It's even better.
I said, it was great. I said, and at this time I was starting high school, and it was one of those things where I go, now, this is great. I'm going to be a disc jockey, which I thought was going to be a great gig. But they wouldn't let me on the radio because my voice was too high. Because I was talking like this. My voice hadn't changed yet. I didn't sound like a radio announcer. I was trying to sound like a radio announcer, but I just couldn't do it. So eventually, what happened was, this is how I was worried. They had a show called the Bob Carroll Silent Hour, where I play records, there'd be commercials, and every once in a while you'd hear a disc jockey come in saying, you're listening to the Bob Carroll Silent Hour.
But it wasn't your voice.
It was not me. It wasn't me.
So
but
you
it
were
was
a
somebody
disc
else.
jockey on the radio, but you couldn't talk.
People go, who's Bob Carroll? They don't know. Well, you can't see me, so what's the difference?
Yeah.
So I said, well, this is crazy.
And you were probably like 13, 14?
I was like
time?
14 years old by now, and the voice was starting to change.
And this was in New Jersey?
No, this was in Gloversville, New York.
Okay.
At a station called WENT. So I would do this, and that station's still there. I can't believe it. I don't know how they make any money, but they're still there. So it wasn't my fault that, but they finally said it was Christmas morning, and the owner of the station knew I was there, but he never knew I was there. He was paying me, but he didn't know my name. He was, what's that new kid? Who's that new kid you got? So it was just about Christmas Eve. And one of the disc jockeys decided he wasn't going to come in on Christmas. He didn't want to come in. It's a
holiday, right?
It's a holiday. He wanted to be with his family. So the manager said, well, you got to come in. And the guy goes, I don't want to come in. So who are we going to get? So get Bob. Let him do it. And Tom McHugh, who was the disc jockey, called me up on the phone. He says, guess what, Bob? You're working Christmas Day. Now, tell us to your mother and father that you're going to work Christmas Day when you're supposed to be opening presents.
Yeah.
Because they're expecting you to open, I said, well, Tom, this is great. I said, but I can't talk on the radio. They won't let me talk. He says, yeah, you're going to talk all day. You're going to talk. You're going to do commercials. You're going to do news. You're going to do everything. I says, why is this? He says, because I'm not coming in. I'm going to be with my family. So as you're growing up, you say, this is an amazing event. It's something you go, I'll never forget that day. Even though I had to wait for opening, and because I wanted to open my presents.
Of course.
You're 14 years old. You still got the feeling Christmas in you. So you say, I want to open my presents, but I want to be alone on Christmas morning playing records. And I was there all day. I was there from 6 o'clock in the morning. I had my own key. They gave me my own key. And till almost the night shift came on, till like 6 o'clock at night. and just playing records by myself. But
Time and a half too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think so, because I wasn't working 40 hours a week. But in those days, anything, I don't know what. Again, disc jockeys never made much money in those days. Not till you got the big disc jockeys now, like Howard Stern or Don Imus in those days. They were making money, but disc jockeys didn't make money. You did it for the love of radio, because you never knew who was listening, whether it was one person or 600. You don't know who's out there. So, but that was how I got into radio.
What I love about this story is that if you didn't persist, if you didn't just go to that station every day,
Right.
there's no way they ever would have hired you.
You're absolutely
It was
right.
only by persisting and showing up every day that they finally saw that you cared about it.
Right.
They saw that you could help, and they knew that they could trust you because you were showing up even when you had no incentive to show up.
Exactly. I just wanted to be. I mean, in those days, because they were records, they would have you hunt for records.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a request. Could you go find this record? And so not only do you have to take the records, in those days, you cleaned them.
Mm.
You took a rag and cleaned the dust off them.
With the car
in
wax, right?
Yeah, the car wax, which wouldn't have been a bad idea. They don't have record wax, but they used to call them stacks of wax. If you remember, that's what they were. They were made of wax, sort of.
Oh yeah.
Because they had to cut out the grooves, so they were stacks of wax. So they would take you a cloth and clean it, and then you put it back into the sleeve, and then you put it back in the right position. Because in those days, rock and roll was just starting to be from England. So you had a lot of different people like Peter and Gordon and Dave Clark 5. The Beatles were coming up. So it was in that era that you couldn't tell what was a bad song and what was a good song because they all sounded alike. It had that sound. And you go, and there were groups that were coming up that only got one or two hits, like Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. You'd have Jan and Dean doing something. You didn't know where they were from half the time. Was this an England group or is this a Beach Boy group? They all sounded pretty much the same. But you're right, there was persistence with doing that. And then I started working all the time, and I did radio work right up until probably 1970, 71, 72. And doing it in different radio stations around the country. So if it wasn't for going there every day as a kid and being persistent and knocking on the door every day and doing that first impressions on the radio, I never would have been a disc jockey. My life would have been completely different as it is now, as it's been changed. You transform.
That is so inspiring. And another thing that you just connected for me is that the way you got into radio, you weren't even interested in radio until you were doing the impressions.
Exactly.
And the impressions got you into it. And you got into the impressions because you didn't want to wax the floors anymore.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to be in show business, but I couldn't afford to buy props. You're 10 years old. You don't even know where to buy props at that time.
But you did have a voice.
Right. And the other...
leverage what you already had.
The other thing is I wanted to be persistent when I was in school because I wanted to learn how to do magic. And at that time, when you go to a library in those days, it was an enormous event because there would be school field trips just to go to the library. It's like, we're going to the library. We're not going to a bookmobile. We're going to the big building down the street, so we'd get on a bus and so they had magic books. I wanted to be a magic to learn how, because it was fun when we moved from school to school. Every time my parents had a kid, we had to find another house because one more bedroom. So we moved from town to town a lot. We were like vagabonds, but I just told my mother, why don't you just buy a big house, 6 bedrooms. So I would go to the library. And in the children's section, there would be like 6 little magic books. You know how the 7, magic tricks for children and all this. And I went through those books maybe 70 times. I don't know, the same books I took out all the time. And one day I found the Dewey Decimal System in the thing, and I went, what's this? This is where the books are stored. Let me look this. So I looked, 791.2 or whatever that was. I go, that's where all the magic books were. but they weren't in my section. They were in the adult section.
Oh.
I said, "Oh, should I go in there?"
The adult section of the library.
It's like
it sounds
right, because you have the
insane.
children's section and then you have the adult section. So I went to the librarian, and I said, "You have magic books," and it was almost like a cave. It was like, I'm so scared to go in there. Do you have magic books in that other room? Can I go see them? It was like,
You have to show an ID to get
right, it was like voice of God saying, "Yes, you may, but you never take those books out of the library. They have to stay here." And you go, "Why?" So I went there and I found, believe it or not, this is for the holy grail of magicians, was the Tarbell.
The whole series?
The whole series.
Wow.
At that time it was only 7, then we've gone to 8.
Yeah.
But at that time there were 7 volumes of every magic trick you could ever learn at the library. And I saw those books and I stayed at the library for hours.
That's a lifetime that you'll never be able to learn everything from
You
that.
can't learn every trick in those books. But by opening them, it got me thinking about other things. I said, "This guy is amazing that he wrote all this stuff." And I thought he was like a genius that he had all the magic volumes.
That's a legacy.
It was a legacy. So I read the book as much as I could, but there were illusions in the book, and there were things that you had to make, and there were things that you had to learn that you couldn't do by sitting at the library.
Yeah.
It's not like you could bring in, a box and cut it and make illusions out of it while you're at the library. So I begged the librarian. I was very persistent. And so I just said, "Can I just take one book out? I'll have my mother come down and check it." She says, "Yes, if your mother comes down, you can take any book out that you want."
Oh.
So
You're persistent.
I said, yes. I told my mother, I says, "Could you sign a note saying that I can take these books out of the library?" Because they had magic books, they had ventriloquism books, they had joke books, but it was all on the other side of the wall. It was like the Berlin Wall. You had the kids section, and over here, you can't cross.
Which side was the east side and west side? Which side?
I don't know. It's whatever side they had the books. And that to me was one of those things that got me interested. Besides my second grade teacher, who it was the love of my life at that time, because I was shy because I would go to school. And I think by that time I was the oldest child in the family. And, I'd go to the second grade and I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't do anything. Now look at me. I'm a big blabbermouth. But I would talk and I would just do what they said and I'd be quiet. And the teachers found out that I liked magic, that I showed her a trick one day. And so she said to me, this is unbelievable, Mrs. Stewart.
Second grade.
And I still know her, but Mrs. Stewart said to me, "If you do all your homework and all your stuff that you have to do in class, every Friday, I'll give you the last few minutes of our class to do a magic trick." And I said, "What?" So that's how, it all evolves. They say, "What?" Yes. So I would do all my assignments. I would do my homework. I would, do everything she said because I wanted to do my Friday.
Into show business.
It was a big break into show business. And from there, that's how basically everything starts. You find something that you love, something that you care about, something that means something to you, whether it's a job, whether it's gardening or crocheting or knitting or having pets, or you find something that you love and be persistent with it. Never give up. Never give up your dreams. Always think about where you're going with those. I mean, sometimes dreams change. You say
they can certainly evolve.
This wasn't for me. I don't like it.
But you're not in radio anymore.
No,
Yeah.
no. I mean, I knew a minute you couldn't make a living at it. It was just fun. Because you'd say, how would you pay a mortgage with playing records? I mean, yes, unless you're in New York City or Chicago or big major market, nobody's going to pay you $400 or $500 to play records. It's just not. I mean, some of the guys, like in Albany, they would supplement income by having record hops. In those days, They were Boom Boom Brannigan, maybe some of the people know, was a big radio announcer. He was the biggest thing on radio back in Albany. And, oh, Boom Boom Brannigan, it's time for more music, more fun. And he would be the big guy. And I would see him at record hops. He'd have the big black boots on, the nice jacket. I helped him carry his records in one time at WPTR when he was a big disc jockey. And he came to one of our schools and he played records. People loved it. Now you gotta have rock bands and disco lights and all that stuff. But it's only certain people that can make that kind of money. So you got to be happy with what your level is. Whatever your level is in life, whatever you're thinking about doing in life, you can keep going up, but don't forget where your path is. Don't keep it on one even keel. Some people take a lot of detours trying to find the one thing that they like. I have a great family, a great wife, great grandkids, great friends, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So I said, I've learned a lot from people in the past. I've learned from mentors. I've learned from artists, magicians, comedians, ventriloquists. I've met a lot of famous people, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. Now that I'm retired, all my grandkids can watch my magic tricks, but it's an amazing event just to be in here.
It's nice to have a built-in magic act right in the family for them.
It is. Anytime they want to have a birthday party, get Grandpa to do a trick. But
that's perfect. I hear that the great Slim Jim sometimes makes appearances.
Yes, the world's worst magician comes on and makes videos once in a while on YouTube. The great Slim Jim, which is a takeoff or parody on Shin Lim, who won America's Got Talent. So if you want to see something really bad, go to YouTube and look for the great Slim Jim.
And Shin Lim is another example of persistence. I've heard a little bit about his story that he was originally a pianist.
Right.
And he got injured and he realized that he wasn't going to be able to play at the level that he wanted to anymore.
Exactly.
So as a way to heal and to get back, he started learning magic.
Right.
As a way to get back. So that's another great example of how persistence can not only keep moving us forward, but can also help us evolve our lives and growing into new. But if he hadn't been injured, if he had stuck with music, he would not have won America's Got Talent.
Exactly. Well, if you look at that in that sense of America's Got Talent, there's so many great acts, but most of them, a couple of them, two of them have been ventriloquists, and two of them have been magicians.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing thing right there.
So it was Terry Fader.
Terry Fader, Darcy Lynn, was a ventriloquist, she won.
Yeah.
It was Shin Lim and Matt Franco. Yeah. So those are
classic vaudeville acts.
They are great acts, and it's like amazing to me that they won, because a few years earlier they might not have. And another ventriloquist that did win was Paul Verdi. He won America's Got Talent. So there's 3 ventriloquists that have won. That have been on America's Got Talent, that have won. Some of them had TV shows, and some of them have specials, like Darcy Lynn had a special. Terry Fader's just signed another contract for $100 million. You can't beat it.
I saw Darcy last year when she came through to Foxwoods.
Yeah.
She packed the house, the Grand Theater, the big theater there. She packed the house and she owned the crowd.
Yeah.
She had everyone in the palms of her hands.
She's really good.
Palms of her puppet.
And she's a great singer.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, when you're a ventriloquist or a magician, you don't win on comedy. You win on singing ability. Because Darcy's a good singer. Terry Fader's a great singer. Terry is one example of being an impressionist. And he probably, if he put the puppets down and just did impressions, he might not have won. But because he was doing impressions through the puppets, that's very unique. And so he was getting away with a lot that maybe he shouldn't have, but he did the right thing, the right path, to say, I'm an impressionist. But people don't want to see an impressionist. And he says, I'm a comedian, but he wasn't doing that many jokes. If you watched his performance the first time he won, everything was around music. He had this Etta James song, and they had all these other things that he did with the puppets to make them sing. And that's how he won. But he did a lot of jokes. But people don't win on jokes.
I think a lot about the Smothers Brothers and how I know a little bit about their story, in that they were trying to make it as just folk singers. That's all they wanted to do was be folk singers. That's what they were passionate about. But the problem was they sounded like every other folk singer.
Yeah.
And the only way to be different was to throw in their absurd sense of humor.
Exactly.
And that created just enough difference to propel them to have their own show,
Right.
To be able to tour the world and have all these records.
That's right. They had a lot of comedy albums. And the thing of it is with them is they knew that folk singers were dying out. There was that time where it was Peter, Paul, and Mary. You know, there was the New Christie Minstrels. There were all these folk type songs that they said, well, why don't we just change it and make fun of some of the songs that we do? Mm. You know, I'll start out serious, you come in and be funny. And that's how it worked. Dick and Tommy Smothers did great. And a story about that is one of their producers on their show who worked for them was Harry Blackstone Jr.
I didn't know that.
Harry Blackstone Jr. worked on their show. And if it wasn't for Tommy Smothers, there would be no Blackstone Magic Show today.
Really?
Because Tommy Smothers said to Harry Blackstone, why don't you do your father's act? I've seen you do a couple magic tricks. Why don't you bring that stuff out? Do you still have it? And Harry Blackstone, in his deep voice, said, why, yes, I do. You know, his commanding voice. He said, yes, I do have all that stuff. And he said, do you think I could do that? He said, yeah, just do your father's act, but do it your way. So Tommy Smothers was responsible for Harry Blackstone going on stage and doing that. Amazing. No, yep. Amazing. Persistence.
And and that's just another way of showing that you never know, just blindly doing something over and over again isn't the same as trying something new. Keep moving forward.
Right.
But finding new ways to get there.
Right. Because I was taking the path of show business. I just didn't know which path I was taking. And the most amazing thing about all the things, I did this for a living for over 50 years, and I never once had an agent, never once had a manager, never once got a call from an agent, except once in Canada. But I did it all on my own.
Wow!
And that's being persistent. When you make when you make your own phone calls, when you get your own dates, when you book nightclubs, when you book theaters, when you book amusement parks, and then the last 25 years working as a performer in school shows, doing safety and drug awareness programs. And that is a long career without having one agent or come up to you and go, hey, where you been all my life? You know, so there are a lot of people who are unknown that make a good career.
Well, you're the world's most famous unknown magician.
Yes, the world's most famous unknown magician and ventriloquist.
Yeah.
And the books are available on Amazon.
Yes.
I think we covered everything.
I think so.
Thank you, Jonas. It's a pleasure. Always good to see you.
Yeah.
Since you were 8 years old.
I was just a little guy.
You were a little guy. Thank you, and I'm glad I was able to teach you some magic in your life.
Thank you, Bob, for everything.
Thank you, Jonas. Bye, everybody.
Hey.
What a show.
That was great.
Holy cripe.
Yeah.
Hey, you got enough material?
Absolutely.
It has been a joy getting to know Bob after all these years, starting off as a mentor, becoming a friend, and then of course also becoming a colleague in the world of magic. It's been a thrill being able to work with him on a number of projects. And as promised, I'm going to share with you folks the very first magic trick, the first professional magic trick that I received from Bob. And it's the classic 3-card trick. Bob told me, he said, Jonas, all you have to do is follow the red card. And it seemed simple enough. Seemed very simple. And even though he mixed up the cards, I was confident that I knew where that red card was. But I was wrong every time. I could never find the red card because it was never quite where I thought it was going to be. Now, Bob, of course, being the gentleman that he is, he offered to help me out a little bit. And he took the cards and he tried to make it as simple as he could. He eliminated one of the cards. He just got rid of it completely. Now think about this. Now we only have 2 cards that we have to follow. And yet, despite how simple he made it, I could never find that red card. Now, at the time, as a child, I don't think that I understood this on an intellectual level, but now that I have the benefit of looking back and connecting the dots, looking backwards, I think what I see this as some of our most amazing opportunities in positive experiences that we're going to find will perhaps be found in places that we would least suspect. And if you are yourself looking for a mentor, perhaps that mentor that you're looking for might not be as far away as you think. Until next time, my name is Jonas Kane. Stay positive.